Is it still possible to ghost yourself in today's day and age where everything is tracked? Your name, your biometrics, your money? Well, one passport program might just let you do that if you know how to use it. Over the recent years, second citizenships have been hyped as the ultimate escape from collapsing Western governments. And while some of them still have their use case, we'll get into it, most of them have become expensive optical illusions for those who actually need them due to tightening sanctions and restricted visa access. Now, we do not sell second passports, but we care about privacy. So in the next few minutes, we'll break down which of these programs still make sense today, which ones to completely avoid, and one country's passport that could be potentially the closest thing to a second identity in a digital gulag. Without further ado, let's get into it. First off, when does it make sense to actually buy a second passport? Well, if you can afford it and don't qualify already by descent, then citizenship by investment programs are absolutely useful ways to maximize your options and do business internationally. But maximizing your options does not mean cutting them off. And that's what happens when you renounce your Tier 1 passport. US citizens, for example, are often told by these promoters to just ditch their citizenship in order to escape the worldwide income tax. But this advice usually comes from somebody who is trying to sell you something. And we believe that this is extremely short-sighted because if you're wealthy, then your income should not be in your name in the first place. That's what legal entities are there for. Own nothing, control everything, and then 20%, 50% taxes on zero will still be zero. Now let's make one thing extremely clear. Every passport is a slave card, no matter which mafia state issues it. It's just some countries give you better tools when it comes to banking, moving money, and doing business. So my question to you is, why would you throw away the leverage that you already have? Even if you hate that government, governments, they change. Your children, they might want to use that system one day, even if you have no need for it right now. And all those Americans that renounced their passports, well, the best known example is Roger Ver, and even that didn't stop him from getting extorted by the US government. And the Caribbean passport that he got, guess what? They're not benevolent countries, they're not charities, they're crooks just like the rest of them. It's just that they understood very clearly that nobody wants to live there long term, so they were kind of forced to become tax havens and sell these cheap CBIs. Good job, Dominica and St. Kitts. You made everyone aware of your existence and made some money off of it in the meantime. And all of these Caribbean islands, they're essentially American colonies in everything but name only. They share information with the FBI directly, not just for criminals. In fact, I would say that if you're a criminal, these are all honeypots because the passport can be revoked, not just if you've committed a crime, even if you're suspected of having committed one after you've gotten the passport. And what counts as a crime? Whatever the mafia state says it is. And you're not even going to be saved by the UN's Convention on Statelessness because it's so vague, they don't even need you to have a second passport to rely upon. All the country has to say is that you've conducted yourself in a way that seriously harms the nation's most important interests, and they take away your passport. Yes, even in the 21st century, stateless people exist. For example, Ukraine right now is considering to remove passports from draft dodgers. For them, that's considered a crime. A few years ago, a couple of Russian and Belarusian nationals, they lost their Cypriot and Maltese passports. For them, sanctions were the reason. And who knows where this is all going to head? But know this, it is a rented badge of convenience. All these passports, they're given with one hand and they can be taken away with the other. Now, in a hypothetical scenario where some jihadi hijackers take over a plane, it's probably preferential to show your Caribbean passport rather than your American or British one. That is until they open page 1 and see that you were actually born elsewhere. And And that's the problem with all these CBI programs. They still keep your original place of birth. And from an identity standpoint, it makes it kind of useless. And that's before we go through all the airport security, the biometrics, the facial scans, the fingerprints. You're not getting past any of those through a modern border. But let's say that you didn't even buy that passport for travel purposes. You just wanted to open a centralized crypto exchange account or a bank account with it. And you'll go to that bank with your shiny new St. Lucia passport. All of your money is clean, but you're not black. They immediately know it's a CBI passport, and even though you're completely in your right to buy one, even though it's perfectly legal, the bank manager's first question is, if you're not actually from there, then why did you buy it in the first place? And many first-tier banks, they'll simply reject your application because they'll deem that you have criminal ties with it, even though you don't. There are only few countries that don't show that place of birth, and that would be Japan and Switzerland. They show a place of origin. So in the case of Switzerland, it would be a canton. Now, Canada does allow you to omit the place of birth, but it can come with its own travel headaches. And then there are a few countries that don't have this place of birth at all, like South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Liechtenstein. The problem with all these passports is you can't buy them. So, can you still ghost yourself today with a second passport? Yes, but you need to draw your inspiration from the past. Specifically, the World War II Nazi rat lines that allowed all those German officers to flee to Brazil, Chile, Argentina, all under the help of the governments that they fled to. And by the way, those were not fake passports that they got. They were all government-issued identities with new names, new birthplaces, new date of birth, all registered into the national system. And why were they able to do this? Because they were useful. They did not come there as refugees. They came there as torture consultants. I meant military advisors. And in return, the countries gave them a different identity. So from all of this, we can conclude two criteria that is needed today. First, you need to have a country that is semi-independent, that isn't a US or NATO puppet. And secondly, you have to be useful to the country's internal objectives, even if that means coming in there with your hard cash. Today, that country is Turkey. Once a loyal ally of the US during the Cold War, it has started to prioritize its own needs over NATO's because it's a regional power. Obviously, the US doesn't like that, and that's why they started a financial war against the country following their 2016 failed regime change. They incentivized foreign companies to sell off Turkish bonds, and in turn, that led to a Turkish lira collapse. Coincidentally, that's exactly when the Citizenship by Investment program was born in order to attract that hard currency and stop the bleeding. Under this program, if you buy a property worth over $400,000, not only can you get Turkish citizenship, but you can legally change your name during the application process. And this is encouraged by the Turkish government. It's not a new program. This was already a policy during the Ottoman Empire, when the Turks, they were ruling over many ethnicities, and in order to integrate them into Greater Turkey, they encouraged those ethnicities to Turkify their names. And when traveling internationally, due to all of those dozens of ethnicities, it makes the story plausible. And you can always say that you own property in the country, that you Turkified your name in order to get the better deals, because the locals are known to scam and to increase the prices for foreigners. Now, is the citizenship perfect? Obviously not. You still have the place of birth in the city-country format. However, if you're on some world check or you just want to disappear from view, it's one of the only CBI programs that lets you rewrite the presentation layer of your identity in a way that other countries would find believable. Now, just note that the process does take time, a little less than a year, and you must get the right service providers because even those lawyers that take a lot of money in Turkey, They can be chaotic, they may ghost you, they may give you wrong information, sometimes even mistakes in the documents. The realtors, obviously, they'll jack up the prices, and the fixers, they take money and then just simply disappear. Now, if you decide to go down the CBI route in Turkey, especially if you're paying in crypto, do not go for those all-encompassing solutions that are usually going to be promoted by those developers, because you're not going to get the best service. You want to have a professional for each part of the deal-making process. So start off with an immigration lawyer that specializes in CBI investments. They can also help you open a bank account. You want to make sure that the OTC dealer is not tied to the property purchase. That will also allow you to buy second-hand homes. Your lawyer can help you negotiate the prices down. Still, if done right, the Turkish CBI program is going to give you something that no Caribbean passport can provide, and that's a reasonable backstory. It allows you, by the way, to travel internationally because guess what? Those Turkish borders, let's put it this way, they're very lenient. There's always a way to grease the wheels, as they call it. A lot of Iranians do it, so you can keep that in mind. Now, do not get it twisted. A passport is simply a piece of paper. It's a document. It's not your immunity from the digital gulag, because we live in a system where you have biometrics, you have FATCA and CRS, you even have blacklists, and a citizenship by investment program is not the only solution for it. Because if you're wealthy, it's far smarter for you to just get everything out of your name through legal structures like trusts, foundations, heck, nominees. You own nothing, you control everything, and then the second layer can be a passport. And mind you, when speaking about Turkey, it is not a tax haven. The taxes are quite high, actually, so you only want to put in enough money to qualify, because remember, what a government gives with the one hand, it can take away with the other. I made a previous video on how private equity structures can be used to anonymize your wealth. You can check it out over there, but that's it for today's presentation. If you enjoy this type of content, you can always share it with a friend or comment down below, but I'll be seeing you next time. And until then, bye-bye.